let's start then. So this is, I would say, the second, should I say, second session of, this engineer CoC oral preparatory class for marine engineers. Without wasting too much of our time, let me just quickly go through the Zoom meeting protocols. Okay. So let's try and limit background noise. If you have any questions, you may use the chat option. You may also, if you wish to maybe contribute, you can use the raise hand option as well. So if you check your Zoom, controls where you have the mute button, stop video, and security, you see like a drop down, and you can select the function that you want as appropriate. Headphones, if you wish to use that, for a better meeting experience. And video is actually optional, but make sure before you turn off your video or turn on your video, you have an appropriate background before you do that. And let's try and make this session as interactive as possible. Okay. So later, during this session, I'll like to also ask for volunteers. So we need more speakers, more presenters on this forum. So I'm going to be sharing a link to a link to a SurveyMonkey form or a feedback form. So there you can complete the form as appropriate. Okay. So on the safety and agenda, ergonomics. So since we'll be sitting for maybe approximately 1 hour, let's ensure we maintain good sitting posture. Make sure you don't have any slip, trip, or fall hazards around, just in case you need to use the restroom. Make sure your exits are free of any obstruction, okay, in the unlikely event of any emergency, and try and stay hydrated. You may want to have a glass of water in front of you. And on the agenda, as I said before, this will take about 1 hour. So very shortly, we'll be taking the opening remarks from Engineer Ogbu, and later we'll go into the first, presentation. That will be around competence and development. And then we'll do the survey. We'll also use that opportunity to take attendance. And after that, we'll invite Engineer Aihonsu to take us through the dry docking procedures before we take question and answers, and we can close. So this will take approximately 1 hour to complete. So without further ado, let me invite the president of the Amano Europe, Engineer Ogbu, to give us the opening remark. And after that, I think you can just continue with your presentation. Engineer, sir.
Hello, good evening, everyone. As always, it is a great pleasure and privilege to be here today supporting the next generation. I believe that Amano has to stand for something. In the global competitive space, we have to be ready to play our part. We can call these many things. They pay it forward, the training next generation, they preparing Nigerian seafarers for their competitiveness, taking advantage of the cabotage law, which we say is happening. Luckily for all of us, I'll be presenting on competence. And you ask me, why haven't you chosen an engineering subject too? The reason is quite simple. That is, I believe that if we can get the competence issue right, we can be competitive and deal with the issues from a competitiveness standpoint instead of a psychologically disadvantaged standpoint. Welcome. It's beginning, it's getting better. There is something really, really big brewing here. And I want you to join us all on this journey, and let's serve the next generation. Thank you. I am going to share my screen, but because it allows me to control the pace that we're going. Hopefully, it will be a lot quicker if I do that. I have 20 minutes for this presentation. It's 8 minutes past, and I should be done just before past. Okay. I'm hoping that my screen is being shared.
Not yet, sir.
Okay. So, share screen. Start now.
Yes, we can see your screen now.
Okay. I love this presentation. I developed it a couple of years ago when I was working as competence and assurance development manager for a global company. And we wanted to look at what competence is, how do we develop it across the industry completely, how do we implement it, and how do we become the benchmark for industry, really. And I can adapt it to suit whatever, because competence is an issue that sets across industries. As marine engineers, it holds true for us as it holds true for many industries. We're here, we call this CoC preparation. If we've forgotten, CoC is Certificate of Competence, which is the competence bit that we're talking about again. I'm going to be hopefully making cross references to other things, particularly football, something that I know that we all understand. And the simple reason for that is that I want to drive home some points about competence. Are we ready? Let's go. Now, why do we need to be competent? What does that mean for us? I want us to take two things away from this. And the first thing is that positive attitude is the first thing you need to achieve competence. Once you have that, we can go to the next things. And then when we have robust systems, we can guarantee that the people we are training are competent. I will start with the marketplace. We've already done that. I'll start with the marketplace. We want to get into work once we've finished. I've been following what's happening in the LinkedIn pages about competently or people with competence certification not getting jobs in the industry. And I want to say to you, my people, in the competitive world, nothing is given. You have to earn it or take it. And I'm going to look at this from a global marketplace scenario. When you look at, say, the Philippines or India, when people want to hire a particular workforce, they go to those places. And that's because they've positioned themselves as competent in those areas. I'm going to point you quickly to the Premier League as a product. If you look at the Premier League, and look at the first 12 position teams, you will only find that only one, number 11 or thereabouts as at today, has an English manager. All the top teams, when they want to win something, they hire the best managers. And this is what competence is about. And sometimes we psychologically go into this place where we're saying we will not get the job because we will not get it, they will not hire us. And I completely disagree. If you are able, if you build yourself up to a level where we are accepted as good enough or better than the competition, you will get the job. We recently all just celebrated Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, Dr. Mrs. On her job, but we can go back in and see that the last 3 jobs she went for, head of IMF, head of World Bank, and head of WTO. Well, if she didn't get that, she will get the next top job because whatever else played out politically, we can all agree that in that field, she is competent and qualified. And if she does well, same as all of us as engineers, if we prove our competence, we open doors. And we're not just opening doors for ourselves, we're opening doors for our country. That's my attitude for when I go on board the ship. So I want us all to take that aboard and say that while I am doing my work, I'm just not representing myself, my family. I am also putting a marker to open door for the next generation of Nigerian seafarers who will be coming in. So I owe it to myself to execute enough skill, enough knowledge in the performance of my duty to open those doors. Where I am lacking, I need to go back in and bridge that gap. Hopefully I'm making sense to someone. Now, I looked at the new Oxford English Dictionary while I was preparing this thing, and they said a competent person is someone who is adequate, but not exceptional, with suitable or sufficient skills, knowledge and experience, and look at that word, attitude, to perform the task given to them. I have adapted it a bit slightly to say that a competent person is somebody who knows their limits or the limits of their capabilities, and they know when to call additional resources or help, and they seek to improve or to increase their capabilities. And then from a professional standpoint, they are taking ownership of their competence or personal development. This is important because we are, as a body of engineers, competing for work in the global marketplace. And we need to be able to do a job properly so that we can be accepted by the global work community as being good enough for those jobs. Okay, now this is really, really important here, this particular slide. This picture represents what we need to perform. For you to get to the center, which is where I say people need to be competent and motivated, which is where, as business people, that's where they want to hire. You don't want to hire somebody who will not deliver the services for which they've been hired. When you look at the picture, you look at, let's start with the plant. The plant basically represents what we do. So for engineers, the plant is the engine room. The plant represents all the engines, the auxiliary equipment, and support infrastructure that we deal with. And then the people represent the training that we get, which for us at this moment, we are bridging the training that we get so that we can be better, because it consolidates everything and all the other aspects that help the core of the business, okay? And finally, the process, okay? And I believe it represents the process, the mechanism, the know-how, and the series of actions that makes everything happen. Remember that the series of actions, which includes the preparation, the training, the adoption of the right people. And once we can have the right process in the right environment, train the people right, have the right plant, we should be able to have competent and motivated people. I'm going to go back to football again in the next slide. Which is, how can I achieve competence, okay? And how can I maintain the competence? You know, what are we trying to sustain? What are we trying to achieve? So I believe that here in this program, we are hoping to prepare and develop people who would earn money for not just themselves, but for our Nigerian economy. Hopefully, I will get the chance in my next presentation to talk about career planning, and that's where the how long will come in. But let's go to what you need to achieve competence. The first is your skill. You need the right attitude, knowledge, and you need experience. On the LinkedIn pages, sadly, there were people who had obtained their certificate of competence, which we can call skill and knowledge, but are looking for experience, which will come with opportunity to actually demonstrate your skill and the knowledge. But those opportunities are not there yet. Okay, it's unfortunate, but we have to keep at it. Now, a couple of days ago, watching Chelsea play football, the manager pulled some chap, Hudson Odoi. He put him in. A couple of minutes later, he brought him out. And when he was asked, he said they did not exhibit the right attitude for the game and for what they were trying to achieve. And this is very, very typical for many of us who are coming in from our background where we believe we have arrived when we haven't. You have to have the right attitude. You have the opportunity, deliver at the time. There is no need to have any chip on your shoulder, particularly if you are a young officer who is trying to climb up the ranks. In those stages, you need to mellow. Attitude, the right attitude is much, much better than talent. And many people will be, many engineers will be more supportive of you if you demonstrated the right attitude with less talent. And I encourage particularly young engineers to mellow down a little bit, show that you want it, show that you want to learn. It's not just about the money, and the money will come. I was very, very fortunate that when I started, The second engineer on my vessel, I knew that I was lacking in many aspects and I wanted to catch up. So I volunteered for everything. But one day I learned an important lesson. I used to earn $300 a month. I learned that he was earning $300 a day. My general Nigerian attitude came to play and I was very furious. So I went up to him and said to him, Stuart, do you think it's fair that I have been doing all the work all this while and you are earning my month's salary in a day? And the guy smiled and said to me, yes. And I said, why? He said, let me show you. He took me around down the engine room and said, what's that? The compressor? Can you fix it? I said, no. And he kept pointing me, what's that? The main engine, can you fix it? No. The auxiliary engine, no. Can you fix? And he says, okay, that this is important. That if you can learn to fix all these things, you will be paid $300 a day and more because you're not getting paid for the job you do. You're getting paid for when things isn't working, your ability to fix things. And I want us to bear that in mind. We need to develop ability to provide the solution as opposed to just wanting the salary. So if you're a young engineer, even if you're not, get the knowledge, get the skill. With time, you will earn ridiculous amounts of money. Bearing in mind that as an engineer, your skills are very, very transferable. So you need to be able to be there first before you can start having those things on your shoulder. The right attitude will get you the opportunities you need. And when you have the opportunity, please, please, please do develop or do show that you're deserving of those opportunities. Yeah. In doing my study on competence, I discovered this from Abraham Maslow, that there are 4 stages of competence. Yeah? And the first stage, he said, was unconscious incompetence. So when people don't know that they don't know. Okay. But then there is the second section, which he calls the conscious incompetence, which is where you realize that there is a knowledge gap and you need to plug it. Always ask yourself, do I have a knowledge gap? Is there something I need to plug? And if you can spot it, close it before you get there. You know you cannot fix that equipment. Ask the second engineer, not when you're in an emergency. Nobody has time to ask those questions or to answer those questions there because you're expected to deliver in those instances. So once you discover that there is something you cannot do yet, find a way to close that gap. And conscious competence is where we all want to be. This is where we have the opportunity. We know that we are comfortable in our ability to deal with stuff. And you can wake up and do it. You are at the state of ready. And we finally want to get to a place where we are anyhow competent. So this is what we call unconscious competence. You can do stuff without thinking. And I remember one of my chief engineers, Engineer Nielsen, he always seemed to be watching movies all the time until one day it looked like the whole engine, the whole ship was going down. And I ran upstairs to call him. He never even looked up from the video he was watching. He just said, go tell the second engineer to open the steam valve 2 tons, not more than 2 tons, 2 quarter tons, and they will be fine. I went back and we did that, everything got stabilized. And later I was asking him, and he says, well, what do you think I do? I can already monitor it, and I know that that's what the problem is. What do you think I get paid for? In future, with the right experience, we can ensure that we are in that state of unconscious competence. We can do it. But before we get to that point, let us make sure that with the right attitude, we can at least be classed, not just as you, but as Nigerian engineers, as competent, because it's maybe not just about you. We're in a global marketplace and we have to be competitive in that global marketplace. And then once you've developed the competence, how do you assure it? And this is where NIMASA and all the bodies come in, and our hands are not being strengthened because some of us have to go very far just so that we can get the right acceptable qualification, because our awarding bodies are not maybe up to the standards, or not seen as up to the standard of where it should be. And this is where these CoC preparatory classes are bridging the gap. This is where it's a niche space where Amano, I believe, can come in if the global shipping industry understand that, okay, these new young engineers have been prepared to the highest standard by captains, chief engineers that are very notable. We can go ahead, and our Nigerian seafaring system can be looked at as having enough systems and capacities that are robust, that can hold up against international standards, that it maintains the right values, and with time we can also start innovating in the research we have done, instead of just continually copying or trying to follow the standards that have been set by others. Thank you. And that's the end of this presentation, because I have run out of time. I hope it was useful.
Very, very useful, sir. Very useful. Thank you so much for that presentation. I don't know if we have any questions, comments for Engineer Ogbu.
Good afternoon. Good evening.
Yeah, Dami, good evening. Go ahead with your question.
Okay. In the aspect of competency, what if you are not given the chance in the first place to even show your competency? Is the person that is giving the chance to show the competency that will even show, like, I can do this or I can do that? What happens to we ladies that we are being rejected because of our gender? They don't even want to look at your face, or maybe you are even being harassed. You are being like, they just want to have one or two things with you because of your gender. We all know that. So you're not even given a chance at all. Some companies even tell you plain and blank, we don't take ladies, like to your face, we don't take ladies. So why are they admitting ladies when they know they can't take ladies? What do you do to this kind of thing? Even when you are even the best in your class, you're even better than the guys when you were in your class, but still they didn't give you the chance to even show the competency. It really hurts. So how do you even show this competency? So many people are now showing their competency, selling shoes and selling clothes and all that. So how do we show this competency as ladies? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I cannot stay here and say that you haven't said what's happening, because I am friends with one of the engineers. She was lady, and I know the biases that go in with female seafarers. But there is the thing I want to say. As a young man, I was in the Scout, and they had this motto: be prepared. And I can say, be prepared. There are many female engineers who are blazing the trail, I will say. But it is very unfortunate that even Schlumberger just did a survey that came out yesterday. Many of their female engineers could not go offshore because they did not have facilities and coveralls and things that allowed them to go and do their job. So it is not just related to the industry. My father had this mantra. He was the first feminist I knew before feminism became a general thing. And he used to say to my sisters and to ourselves that a girl child is the same as the male child, given the same opportunities. And we're beginning to see that. But the system is still very patriarchal, and we have to keep fighting it so that these opportunities or more of these opportunities can be there. I'm a businessman, and I'm hoping that in future I'll be in a place where I can, for instance, buy vessels where it will happen. I ran a competence development program for a big company, and there were jobs they said only men could do. I said no. I put out an all-female deck deployment a system to show that no, with technology and all of that, and with the right thinking, it will happen. But what I will say to all the female engineers who feel who these are happening to, because it's not a feeling, I know it's happening, is be prepared for when those opportunities come so that you grab it with both hands. Stay the course. The opportunity will come, believe you me.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you so much. So we can take one more question before we move to the next presentation. Any other question? Okay, I had already posted the link in the chat option, so please just click on that link and complete the form as appropriate. So without wasting time again, let me invite Engineer Aihonsu to take us through the dry docking procedures. Engineer Aihonsu, you have the floor. Do you need me to present my?
Engineer Illeka.
Okay, sorry. Are you going to present your screen?
Can you please? Can you? No, just go ahead and present the slide.
Okay. Let me do that now. Share. Okay. All right, so here's the first slide.
Okay. Thank you very much. My name is Phillip. Can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, so what I'm here to do is to take us through dry docking procedures, and going through that, I want to reflect on questions that are picked from oral questions that are picked from the senior marine engineer class in the UK. And then I'll go to a brief background where we'll talk about dry docking, a brief introduction about dry dock. And then I'll talk about we preparing for dry docking. I'll talk about dry docking itself, and then completing and then floating the vessel and leaving the dock. And we can move to the next one. Okay, so let's reflect on questions. One of the questions an examiner will ask is, what are the requirements for entering into dock? Another question, this could then proceed or go into another question, such as asking you when the vessel is in dock, you should do a bottom inspection from the forward of the vessel to the aft of the vessel. And then he then goes ahead. He might also ask questions related to damages and repairs. So brief introductions. Dry dock, we could say it's maybe floating device, we could say it's a receptacle where we have a vessel. It's been flooded and then you have a vessel come on. And then when you have vessels come on, before your vessel come on, you have the key laid and then the vessels come on it, the water is discharged. And the vessels, the key block laid, the vessel sits on the key blocks. So we have different types. We have a graving, we have a floating, we have slipways. I won't be talking so much about this, but I'll pick two of them. I'll talk about the graving dock and the floating dock. The graving dock is a simple system where you have the key block laid. You have like a ramp or a gate open up to the sea. And this dock is flooded, the vessels come into, sit on the block, and then the water is discharged. For the floating dock, you have a system where you have pontoon belows, like a storage system below where you can transfer water in and transfer water and adjust. So the water is transferred into these areas, and then this dock is literally this dock is being submerged. And after that, with the block laid on, and then the vessel comes on and sits on. So for us to carry out a vessel dry docking, the owners normally will not do this. But it depends on the requirements. There are various requirements for the vessel to be dry docked. There are class and statutory requirements, and the requirements for vessel dry dock, it's every 5 years special service, where we do the bottom service. Also, the vessel could be dry docked if there are repairs that needs to be carried out, if there are emergency repairs. For example, we have a vessel going aground, and then we have a hull breach. What I mean by hull breach, we have a tearing of a part of the plating, and you have water going in, and you could have severe damage to the rudder, severe damage to the propeller, then the vessel has to be dry docked. Talking about requirements, there are requirements that are applicable to some type of vessels, and these include vessels that could be dry docked. Instead of the 5 years, there could be allowances for the vessel to be dry docked at every 7.5 years. That's 7.5 years. And that scheme is known as the extended dry dock scheme. There are vessels that this scheme does not apply to. Examples of such vessels are the ESP tankers. ESP tankers, I mean, most of the tankers nowadays are ESP tankers, and then they would not, extended dry dock scheme would not be applicable to these vessels. And vessels, again, that would not be allowed to carry out a dry dock, I mean, going into dock at 7.5 years, it's vessels that have thrusters proportions, vessels like passenger vessels, and so on. So we can then move to the next slide, where we then talk about preparation for dry docking.
I think there's a
Can you
delay.
see
I'm
next
already,
slide?
yeah, I have.
Okay, thank you. So preparing for dry dock, what we need to think of, when do we prepare for dry dock? I would say that the best time for you to start preparing for the next 5-year dry dock is when the ship leaves the first dry dock. Let's say the vessel is built today, and then in the next 5 years is going for dry dock. Once the vessel leaves the shipyard, it's time to start preparing for the next 5-year dry dock. That allows and ensures adequate preparation. And that's my own opinion. And considering that for you to be prepared, you have to start gathering data in terms of repairs. A way of doing that is what we call dry dock specifications. This is like a list that you have all the repairs that have to be carried out. In this list, we include all the machineries, if possible. If we have a section for uploading documents, if we're using an electronic system, then we can also upload documents such as piping diagrams, manuals, and so on. And in this specification, we also include all details, available details that we have about the machineries, including a serial number, maker, type, and so on. Again, we have to start thinking of the documents that will be required during dry docks. And examples of such documents, to mention a few, it's we have the docking plan, which allows the dry dock to be able to lay the queue for that vessel so that the vessel can come into dock and sit properly. We have the shell expansion plan, which tells us about the shell. It tells us about the thickness, plate thickness, and so on the shell. Shell, I mean the platings around the vessels. It gives us information about the arrangement, and also gives us information about their thicknesses, the type, and so on. And we also have the arrangement for the rudder arrangement. We should keep this we should keep this also within and close in a closed area where we can easily access this and not start looking for this drawings when we're in the shipyard. Again, we have the propellers arrangements and other relevant documents depending on the repairs or other modification or alterations that have to be carried out when the vessel is in dock. Again, we need to start thinking about the spares. What do we need when the vessel is in dock? We don't want to go take the vessel to dock, we have the key block, and then we don't have spares. It's expensive to stay on the blocks, very expensive. So we have to start thinking about what do we need. Most importantly, we have to be sure we have spares for on the water parts. Examples of such are we have the tail shafts, including propeller shafts. I mean propeller shafts if you don't understand what I mean by the tail shafts. Then we have spares for rudders, we have spares for valves, sea valves, and so on. And then we also need to think about the special tools. What do we need? What are the tools that we need to carry out the repairs that needs to be done? Do we require subcontractors that has to do this job? So subcontractors such as the makers of machineries and equipment to come on board to carry out the jobs. We have to start thinking and planning and getting in touch with them, arranging this and putting things in place before the vessels get to the dry dock. Again, we also need, once we've been able to confirm a docking space in a shipyard, we have to start discussing the requirements and services we need from them, which include shore connecting to the power, with shore power, the fire protection systems, the cooling water systems for AC, for refrigeration, if required for the auxiliary engine, if we're going to be using the auxiliary engine for a short time before we get connected to the shore power. Thank you. We can go to the next slide. Again, now we are at the dock and we need to go on the blocks. We need to go on the block. So a consideration that is also important is we have to think of the condition of the vessel, establish condition of the vessels when we are at the dock. The vessel should be light as possible. And also we should have a positive and considerable metacentric height. Also, we should have a trim that is upright, not having lead support to starboard. And then it's also important to also have soundings of the tank so that we can carry out the trim accordingly. If we need to transfer, if we need to discharge water, and if we need to also transfer fuels, lube oils, and all that, we can carry that out before going to the dock. Again, we need to, very important for the engineers, we need to check the deflections for the engines. Deflections, carry out crankshaft deflections, that's a different topic on its own, so I won't go into that now. And then we change over services once we are on the key block, we are flooded, and then we can gradually change over services before the water having discharged from the dock. Services including connecting to shore powers, shutting down emergency machineries, isolating systems, and then while we're doing this, we also have to take into consideration the safety of the vessel, the safety of the dock, safety of the operations, communication between the ship and the shore. The dock personnel has to be very effective. And we also need to consider jobs that have to be done, such as hot work and close space. When we are at the dock, what is the level of security in the dock we are in? We need to put this into consideration while we are at the dock and on the key blocks. We can go to the next slide, thank you. So now the vessel is on the dock, what do we do? One of the questions I have put forward is for us to do an inspection from before to aft. So I'll quickly do this, and which is one of the things we want to do is to see the hull. The hull is the shell plating. If you can see the background in the presentation, it's what we're seeing there. That's the bottom side plating. We have to do an examination of this, and while we're doing this, we're checking for indentation, we're checking for buckling, we're checking for cracks, we're checking for corrosions. If there are any of these, then we need to discuss this with the superintendent, who in turn discuss this with the class surveyor responsible, the class surveyor that is present and then carrying out the dry docking. At the same time, at the forward part, we need to check the anchors on the chain. We need to gauge and range anchors. And the vessels at the dock will have their anchor laid out. And then we can see the chains, see the conditions, we gauge them, we range them. If required, we have to weigh the anchor. And then for the anchor itself, we have to check general conditions such as checking if there are no deformations, if there are no cracks, if there are no severe damages to the fluke, to the shanks, and so on. For bow thrusters, we have to have a look at the gratings. We have to have a look at other supporting structures around the areas, and then see the blade, indentations, deformation on the blade, cracks, if there are any on the blade. If required, we have to do an NDT, I mean a non-destructive text, which include like a dye penetrant for blades, which may be a DPA dye penetrant for blade. For bus coolers, for vessels with bus coolers, I mean key cooling system. Then these coolers will be removed, and they will be pressure tested, inspected, and while they are being pressure tested, they will be cleaned internally. The gratings also around the areas on the underwater side will be checked, the bolts. We need to have a look at the sea inlet valves, sanitary valves, overboard valves. We have to, those valves normally will be taken out and overhauled. They will be dismantled, they will be cleaned, thoroughly inspected for cracks, for corrosions. And we can go to the next slide. Next one. Okay, so what we need to check also there at the bottom, we have what the cathodic protection system is there, which has we have several notes in there. Check their conditions. If they are depleted, they have to be replaced. Big cooling appendages and big queues, we have to check them. We check for cracks. We check if they are deformed. If they are cracked, then repair has to be carried out. If there are deforms, there are criteria. This should be discussed. This should be discussed with the superintendent, and then a discussion with the class review. We go on to sea checks, ratings. We've talked about that. Then propellers, going all the way to the stain now. Propellers, they have to be checked thoroughly, and then the blade has to be checked for cracks. We have to check if there are any oil leakages. We have to check if the blades are deformed. We have to check for erosion, cavitation damages. And for CPP, controllable pitch propellers, we need to check the servo mechanism. We have to check the blade seals. If they're intact, we have to ensure there are no leakages. If there are defects on any of these areas, then repairs have to be carried out. There are various ways of carrying out repairs and damages on the propeller. And then going forward, we need to check the wear downs for the T-shaft. And also, it might be required for us to withdraw the T-shaft while the vessel is in dock. If it's if we have checked the wear down, if they're excessive, and if we have done an inspections and we could see that there is a need for us to withdraw the shaft, then the shaft would be withdrawn. Or if the survey for the shaft is due when the vessel is in dry dock, which sometimes is the case for most of the vessels, then the shaft has to be withdrawn for the T-shaft surveys to be carried out. And then we moved on to the rudder. We have to check the rudder stock. We have to check the horns. And we're checking for cracks. We're checking for deformations. We are checking, we have to check the pinches. For the pinches bearings, we need to check clearances. Neck bearings, we check clearances. If they're excessive, the repairs have to be carried out. They have to be replaced. After thrusters, we check the blades. The gears, they need to be opened up if we are doing a thruster surveys at the time. And if we are not doing this thruster surveys, then it will be an external examination. It's also important to have a look at our speed lock, senders, which are right there at the bottom to see that they are in good condition. So we can go to the next slide, please. Okay, we've done all these mentions. If there are repairs to be carried out, they have to be done before the vessel leaves the dock. For repairs, it's important to always discuss repairs before we proceed with the class surveyors. So the surveyors classification site will be of assistance and advice on how to carry out an adequate repairs and prevent getting the vessel into dock after we've undocked the vessel, because if we don't carry out a thorough adequate repairs, then most likely repairs that are being carried out, the equipment, or let's say we pull out the defect again and the vessel have to go back onto the dock. So final docking, we've carried out the inspections, cleaning of the oil is done, painting has been done. We need to get the vessel out of dock. For the vessel to be out, we have to do a final docking inspections, which include dismantling, and then mounting we've done. We have to show these are done properly, because when we do, it's easier to dismantle things, but when putting them back, we have to be sure the things are not missed out. One of the inspections, we include having a check at the propellers to be sure the bolts are in place, the attention to the right torques. We have to check the T-shaft to be sure there are no leakages. If possible, we can fill up the header tanks for the seals, for the oil lubricating system for the shaft at that time, and then I will look at this and ensure that this level is not dropping. You know what I mean? It's not, you're not losing oil. The level is not going out, to be sure the seals are intact, at least when the vessel is still on the key block. And we have to have a check at the bottom plugs for the tanks. If they have been removed, to be sure they are in place, and then they are not in place and adequately tightening. After we are sure that everything at the bottom is fine, we can then start flooding, and then we can have to start discontinuing the services Services include changing back to ship power, emergency if possible, and then to the main generators. Once we have cooling for the generators, and we can go on to start preparing equipment, pumps, starting them, having machineries back online. And then the vessel is prepared to leave. Along with that, we have to ensure the watertight integrity of the vessel at that time, because we've dismantled the chairs, we've removed board valves and sea inlet valves. All these areas has to be checked again to be sure we are not having water ingress. And we need to do sounding of the tanks for bottom plugs that have been removed to be sure the plugs are in good conditions, and having a check on the seals again to be sure we are not having water ingress, water is not going in. Check. Once we ensure the water integrity, one thing I want to mention is that also we need to consider company procedures. If there are any safety requirements, and from docking, we need to have a check on this. And then we start thinking of, okay, do we have enough fuel for the seafarer? If there are enough bunkering, the vessel takes bunkers, and then we carry out seafarer. Seafarer include a checks of machineries that has been overhauled. And we checks on operating condition of the vessel general, and then with speed, the propellers, there are no undue vibrations, loading of overload test on machineries as required. And once we're satisfied, then we're satisfied with the dry docking. Thank you. Thank you very much. If you have any question, I will be very happy to assist. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Engineer Aihonsu, for that very comprehensive and detailed presentation. I really appreciate it. So for the benefit of those preparing for their class 2, class 1, this presentation will be always very, very useful. That said, for the young engineers, it's also, there's no knowledge lost. So you may want to take notes. I'm not sure if we are allowed, Engineer Aihonsu, are we allowed to share this, distribute these slides to the participants?
Yeah, we can distribute them, but we can distribute them. I'll discuss this with you. And we'll
okay. All right, noted, noted. All right, so any questions? We already exceeded our time contract by 1 minute. Okay, so we're still doing very well on time though, even though it's just 1 minute past. So let's just take 5 minutes and take questions. Questions for Engineer Aihonsu.
Yeah, good evening. This is US. Hello, can you hear me?
Loud and clear, please go ahead.
Yeah, based on the dry docking, when they are having dry docking, we'll be having some supporting crew that will be coming in on board, coming with their equipment and with their machines. And sometimes they will come with tools that are always different from what we always have on board. And when it is about, when they complete their jobs, and they'll be about taking their equipment and most of their tools, how do we always follow up? Because most of their tools, they normally come with, they may put in their dock procedure planning, but when they are coming on board, some of those tools are not in there. They are not bringing those tools. So how can we follow up with all those things? Thank you.
Thank you very much. We call them subcontractors, or I call them subcontractors. You need to discuss with them what tools. That goes in when you're planning for dry docking. You need to let them know they have to come based on the agreement you have had with them before the job commenced. You need to let them know what they need, what tools you are to give them. Most likely they will require special tools, but for tools like spanners and so on, I would advise for the ship tools to have a mark on them. I remember my first time in dry dock. I was a cadet then. That was my first time in dry docks a few years ago. We had to mark the tools. We had a special mark on them up and down so we can differentiate our tools from the subcontractors and from the contractors too. So If you're giving out also any tools, it's your own responsibility to follow up with who you are giving it to and ensure you get your tool back and have it in place, or else after the end of the dry dock, you have to start ordering for tools.
Yeah, and thanks, Engineer Aihonsu. So you can have a plan. I believe before you start any task, daily task, there's what we call TBT, toolbox talk. So in your TBT, you can discuss how you want to manage both the ship's tool and the subcontractors tool. So just have a plan, to manage so that you don't mix up the tools. Okay, any other questions, please? Okay, in the absence of, just trying to check if there is any raised hand up here. Okay, Emeka Pascal, please go ahead with your question. You're on mute.
Hello, everyone. Please, I would like to know the type of work that would be subcontracted to contractors that will be coming to help out in the dry docking, during the dry dock, the type of work they are meant to do and the one the crew on board are going to do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question. I would advise, this is my own advice, that the machineries regards to when you have to do a major overhaul on machinery such as the propulsion systems, should be given to the makers, which are contractors. If there are some auxiliaries you could also give out if you would not want to overwork the ship, which it's not advisable to do, because when you overwork them during the dry dock, then they will not be able to supervise other jobs that are being carried out, such as the ship side valves that are being removed by the shipyards. Other job includes that would normally be given us will be all overboard valves will be handled by the shipyard, which they will have to take out, and then other machineries that will require the maker, such as the thrusters. If we are withdrawing the shaft, then if you have to remove the propeller, if you have to remove the rodders, this won't be the ship crew. It's advisable to give this. I would say this should be handled by the dry dock personnel or the makers or subcontractors, depending. Other maintenance could be carried out, planned appropriately when the vessel is out of dock, which includes overhauls of pumps and some other things. You can do that when the vessel, because you have to pump, you have one pump on standby, you have the other pump running. You can always run your pump in such a way that both of them are not due for maintenance at the same time. And you can overhaul one of the pump. If possible, let's say the vessel is in dock, or if you're able to do that while the vessel is sailing, you have one pump on standby, you have the other one overhaul, and then you can change over and all that. There are other maintenance that could be done when the vessel is not in dry dock, but for the major ones that are done in dry dock, it's advisable to always to allow either subcontractors, contractors, and the makers to handle this. Thank you. I'm not sure if I've been able to answer your question. If I'm not able, you can let me know.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Engineer Aihonsu. We have one question here from Oluwasegun. Some vessels experience stern tube leakage after flooding. How would you ensure your stern tube seal is 100% sealed prior flooding?
Yeah, I have mentioned that after you have your seal replaced, you have to fill up the system. And a way you will know you're having leakages when you start losing oil, and the level in the tank, it's your gravity tank or either tank, depending on which one you're having in the seal tanks. When you have the level dropping, and then you can add up again and you still see this level dropping, then it's you're having leakage somewhere which you need to clarify before you start flooding. If you don't ascertain that and you flood the vessel and the vessel start leaking after flooding, and I'm sorry, you may be required to go back to rectify the issue. But to prevent that is have the system pressurized before you start flooding and do a thorough check.
Okay. Thanks, engineer. Thank you so much. I hope that answered Shegun's question. So, for the sake of time, so already 8 minutes past. I promised us, 1 hour for this meeting. We can take one more question. I see that US is asking, please explain more on sea chess. We'll probably take that offline, but let me just give opportunity to others. Do we have any other question from, a participant that's currently on this call? Otherwise, we'll move to the closing remarks. At this point, I would like to invite. Let me see if he's online. Okay, I will invite Engineer Don Usoro to give us his remarks, please. Engineer Don, you have the floor.
All right, good evening, everybody. I don't know if I'm being heard. My network is misbehaving. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Can hear you.
Loud and clear.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Chigozie, thank you very much. I can see Engineer Ogbu, Anyaogu. Long time no see. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I actually joined late, and I've not been steady because of the network. But I want to believe everybody must have learned one or two things. And for the guys that are preparing for the exams, all you need to do is just to be confident, enter there. Even if you're not certain about what you're going to tell the examiner, please don't do a guess job, don't do a guesswork, and don't just say anything. You can take your time and just think about it before you say anything. If you're not sure, it's better not to say anything than to just make total blunder. Thank you very much for coming, and hope to see you next time.
All right, thanks, Engineer Don. Thank you so much. Thank you all for joining. So our next session will be March 20th. Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, March 20th. That will be in 2 weeks' time. So I'll also use this opportunity to ask for volunteers. Okay, if you know anyone that is a good presenter, good teacher, you may forward that link that I shared earlier to the person to complete, please. We'll need more presenters on this forum, please. Thank you so much. Thank you all. Thanks, Engineer Ogbu. Thank you, Engineer Aihonsu, Engineer Don, Captain Sobajo. Thank you so much, Captain Afolabi.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We look forward to next time.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.